It's like it's really different now. The hiring market is so different. And one of them is what I want to call out, which is resume illusion, right?
I think most people think I'm mostly qualified. I mostly hit all the boxes. Although you and I also we've served both men and women.
Why is the resume today's illusion?
Reading the room, reading every single room that you walk into. And I talk about in chapter 7 to the micro, my interview prep frameworks, and I call it the rare candidate.
This is a lot of, I feel like it's like the dead skin that needs to slough off from how we used to do things, right?
If you're qualified to do the job, of course, you feel as though you can go ahead and apply.
Any kind of risk. How much evidence do you have that says you really are what you say you are? We have a tonnage issue. Everybody think that they're qualified?
But then you have 800 behind you clogging up these applicant tracking systems, disabling people's opportunities to get seen and heard.
The idea of job security is outdated as a landline. If you haven't been in a search for a while, it's probable you will at some point, by choice or not. Most executives admit to staying way too long or sense what's coming and justify staying anyway. Here, there's another reason. The faulty belief that navigating to what's next will inevitably be worse and has to suck. Screw that. Lauren Greif has spent a lifetime in corporate and executive search, calling bullshit on stale career advice that most still use. This is Career Blast in a Half, the career podcast for executives ready to cut past outdated career advice to fuel your outcomes now. So let's go.
So we're tackling today a brutal truth. Knock, knock, right? McFly, this is the way it was in Back to the Future. Being qualified, it does not get you hired. If resumes and pedigree were all there was, everybody, high executives, high-level executives, and everybody else would be like, oh, this is a slam dunk, and recruiters would be just like pounding down their doors. But they don't, because that isn't how people get hired. And that's where Gina Riley steps in. I can tell you, I've known Gina for a long time. Thankfully, she is not a theorist. She has lived in these boardrooms, advising C-suite searches, training corporate teams in behavioral interviewing, and coaching executives in that icky middle state of transition. She's also a Forbes Coach Council member and the creator of the Career Velocity System. And so no small effort on her part. In fact, I could easily say it was Herculean for her to put the entire playbook, her entire insider playbook, into her new book, Raise It, saying qualified isn't enough. So I can tell you that you will not be disappointed, because this isn't a polish your resume manual. It's strategic. It's about presence. It's about turning blind spots into those breakthroughs. And I got to just say, run, don't walk, and listen to this podcast, because this is literally the vault for career velocity right here. Gina, I just got to tell you, let's just start with the why. So where did people come up with this idea that being qualified was enough, and why isn't it anymore?
I think it used to be a lot easier. I'm a product of coming out of college, early 90s. You submitted your resume. Sometimes you could walk into a front office even. Remember back in the day, Lauren, where you could actually hand an admin or back then a secretary your resume and get seen and heard maybe right then. The volumes are too high. The amount of jobs that are open and visible are too small, and there's not a matchup right now for the amount of need for jobs and the amount of jobs that seem to be available.
So we have a tonnage issue, maybe the shorthand for what you just said. We have a tonnage issue. And weighing in a little bit here, doesn't everybody think that they're qualified? I mean, if you're applying, isn't that like the assumption? Or just people just think they're winging it?
I think what you're saying is true. Most people, if they're going to take the time to apply, because honestly, applying takes a long time if you're going to do it right. I think most people think I'm mostly qualified. I mostly hit all the boxes. Although you and I also we've served both men and women, and sometimes women will not apply unless they're almost 100% qualified, which, we can speak to that on another day. So if you're qualified to do the job, of course, you feel as though you can go ahead and apply. There are a lot of people out of work, though, who are trying to get unemployment and prove that they're applying. So imagine you're among the most qualified and you're in the top 50 or even 200, but then you have 800 behind you clogging up these applicant tracking systems. ATS is our shorthand, disabling people's opportunities to get seen and heard because it's all clogged up.
Exactly. So the tonnage creates like the plaque in the arteries of getting through. And then even if you are qualified, there's just too much gunk in there to expect somebody who's going to be able to cherry pick out, oh, that person is the one that really is not even most qualified. Because what I really want to know is, okay, gotcha, right? Qualified isn't enough. So what is the missing X factor or factors that most executives don't even think need to be added into that recipe?
Oh gosh, I have a couple of check boxes. And the first thing that popped to my mind before we get into some of the information in the book, because I address that in the book, the other thing that we haven't talked about yet is how AI has been disruptive in putting it into the job seeker's mind that the AI built resume is such a perfect match that now they appear qualified. And the challenge that they don't realize is happening on the other side is these recruiters, the same as our college professors, by the way, Lauren, they see the same language on multiple, maybe 50, 100, 200 resumes. Same as my husband, he's a new college professor, and he also sees similar language from paper to paper. And he's like, okay, I mean, that's AI, right? So how are you going to be distinguishing yourself among hundreds of people sitting in that database when you've used AI and not tweaked it in a way that shows the truth of what results that you get and inspires the reader to think, this is the person I've been looking for? Now, I'm going to back into something for you based on that, which is so my book is organized into 3 phases. Phase 1 is developing your unique value proposition. It's 5 chapters. It's a ton of work. And what the reader is doing is using the frameworks and the storytelling to unpack to the micro what their strengths are, what their values are, and how it leads and guides their decisions and how they behave. Their leadership approach. How do you lead people and teams during times of change? And if you're a leader who doesn't have a team, how do you lead from your seat on the bus and how do you influence people? Then we get to step 3, chapter 3, which is unpacking that thread that runs through your career so you can more quickly tell people those themes and patterns that are unique to you, because we all have that. Chapter 4 is creating a data vault. You use the word vault. I help people think about what goes in the vault. What is in the repository of facts and information that they may be able to draw from for the rest of their career transitions all the way through? And then chapter 5, the culmination of phase 1, tell me about yourself. So Lauren, I just published my most recent Forbes article, and it's called Your Elevator Pitch is Costing You Opportunities. Why an elevator pitch is 60 to 90 seconds and makes a person feel like they're having to sell themselves. It's a marketing, branding type of statement that you're saying. The tell me about yourself is 3 to 5 minutes. It pulls the thread through and it helps people infuse the language about how they lead, what their strengths are without saying, I show up as an activator. We don't need to say that in an interview. We demonstrate how we're an activator or an achiever or strategic in the stories we tell, the thread we pull until we get to the tell me about yourself.
So, I mean, that's even hearing that, my eyes are nearly crossed because that sounds like a lot of work, right? And so I can understand because I'm right with you. Right? This is what it takes. And I really want to advocate for it. Because if you're running around and playing a lot of shortcut games, it's probably going to bite you in the butt, right? And so, that missing ingredient, right? I got my MBA from Wharton or, from Columbia or whatever it is. And I've, been working at Google and I've done all these things and I'm amazing. And I've never had to, by the way, I've never had to go and play the part of that job seeker because I've always been recruited. I've always been in a position where people were coming to me. And, I've said this before. I'm curious to hear what you say. Is that a blessing? Is that a curse or something in between?
It's a little bit of a cross between opportunity meeting luck. So the opportunities are generated by the results we get and the way that we make people feel along our professional journey, making us remembered and seen and heard along the way, intersecting with those lucky opportunities that pop up and people can remember us. The challenge back to where we are in this current environment is there's so many people looking for opportunities, so many great people. Think of the thousands and thousands of people laid off from our Nikes and our Intels, and you just go down the list. Plenty of amazing people. I'm currently working with a couple of people from Intel. I'm an Intel alum. And what I am noticing is really difficult after 20 to 30 years being a technical program manager or a technical product manager. These resumes coming from the outplacement firms all look identical. They're all vanilla white, black text, no shading, no bolding, and the results are missing. It's task related. And so how are you going to stand out if you're among hundreds and hundreds of technical program managers if you can't even remember the stories about your successes?
So I love that we're talking about the truth. This is the A team. You're looking for a job at a certain level. You got to remember everybody, of course, is qualified and everybody has great wins. So how do you distill down yours again so that you could talk about them? But I guess in this recipe of missing things, stories, value propositions, and so forth, when they get to the final round, right, it's kind of like a little bit like a mirage, right? Why do these brilliant leaders who have gone through, God even knows how many interviews, why don't they, walk down the aisle? Why are they sometimes the bridesmaids? And what's that invisible filter that ultimately decides who lands that position?
There's many things, and there's a few things that you and I both know that the candidate that comes in number 2 cannot help. For example, I had a global sales leader who was phenomenal who came in number 2 because they felt as though they had to promote the internal candidate for fear they were going to lose that. I talk about this actually in the book. It is Chris. It's anonymized. Sometimes other people who are simply preferred, and it's nothing to do with your skill set. Now, to answer your question, there's tons of things that candidates are doing. They get in their own way, Lauren. So could be executive presence or professional presence. If you don't see yourself as an executive, it's the way you show up that engenders trust and confidence in other people, the confidence, the decisiveness, reading the room, reading every single room that you walk into. And I talk about in chapter 7 to the micro, my interview prep frameworks, and I call it the rare candidate. You need to research. You have to align yourself to the job. You need to read every room, Zoom or in person, and then you need to evaluate if it's a fit for you. And what people are missing is they haven't done the chapters 1 through 5, developing the UVP, unique value proposition, so that they can position themselves as the sharp tool that is needed right now in that company. And unless you do the research to figure out how you align, you're going to have misses and you're going to be in a position of selling yourself versus showing up as a consultant and problem solver they need right now.
Yeah, this is a lot of, I feel like it's like the dead skin that needs to slough off from how we used to do things, right? It's, the scrubber or the facial or the something that gets rid of all this, the old ideas around, well, I'm just going to kind of glance through the company website and, see who's who and what's what. This is roll up your sleeves. I mean, you and I both hear it on a pretty regular basis. Like, it's really different now. Like the hiring market is so, so different. And one of them is what I want to call out, which is resume illusion, right? Like, talk to us about the phenomenon of the resume and what else is either equally as important or even more. And I'm just going to say this because people know this about me. I flippin' can't stand resumes, which is why I don't do resumes. I don't I don't want anything to do with them. And part of it is just from my own bias is the ROI on the resume. But I often think, I mean, I'd be curious to hear, are decision makers, including recruiters, going to LinkedIn first and then the resume? How does this really work? And why is the resume today's illusion?
I have so many thoughts. I hardly know where to start. I'm going to start here is when I started developing Career Velocity, the first problem I was solving when people were coming to me as a coach was I was tweaking resumes, not even a teardown. And you and I both know we have a lot of friends who are writers and have just teams of writers and they do teardowns. They start at the bottom and work their way up. They build it out aligned with a target. So the first issue that candidates face today is they think they need to tweak a resume, and that's totally wrong. That's for starters. 2 misaligned resumes. I have 2 clients who are like, just help me get a generic resume so I can start applying. And I refuse. I'm like, I will not do it. Do not pay me for that. I will not be signing up for that because I can't help them and I will feel also like a partner in failure. I can't stomach it. So there's that. These generic resumes are something that hurt us from getting a call because what we're doing is we're going and talking to our first degree network, people who already know, like, and trust us, and they're willing to connect us. But what they do instead with these generic resumes and also the generic stories that follow, they don't know how to speak on our behalf. So this is what they do because they want to be polite. I'm going to pass this along to hiring managers I know inside of the company I'm at. Well, that hiring manager doesn't know what to do with your resume because you've genericized it. You're not the sharp tool they need. So unless your resume is speaking to a problem that you've uncovered that speaks to that hiring manager, your resume is going to be floating and sitting around. And I would also say never just shoot your resume off to someone, especially you don't know, and say, take a look and let me know where I fit. Now you're putting a cognitive load onto the person reading it, and they are going to just delete it or set it aside. You cannot put that burden on other people. You wouldn't do it for most other people either. Okay, let's go to LinkedIn.
Whew,
LinkedIn is your market.
I
Do you love it?
do because I know that a candidate is in trouble when they think that the tweak is the turning point. It's
Never.
not. It's not. And it's also, from my perspective at 61 and working with so many people that are in their 50, 60 plus, right? That will just immediately tell you that you're living in the past. And it starts to put some bad feelers out that that you're not with it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And one more thing before we talk about LinkedIn with the resume is in the past, I've had other resume writers working with my clients so that I could also expedite the rest of Career Velocity.
Sure.
But what I've also learned more recently is when I'm the co-pilot with them and I'm doing the teardown with them, I am forcing them to own the content in the first place. They need to struggle with me over each and every bullet point and the quantifiable results. And if they haven't thought about it, how are they supposed to tell that story? And
Totally.
that's what really irritates me is when people are like handed, especially from outplacement, here's your resume, go forth, get on your networking horse and go write it. Those people can't speak to the stories because they didn't have to deal with putting it on the paper.
Right. I completely agree. It's okay to get some sweat equity in there because
yeah.
that's the big win, right? Like you're going to know it better than anybody else.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Now, let me say, our resume writing friends out there, they do amazing jobs. They've been doing it for 10, 15 plus years, right? They know what questions to ask. So if you're struggling with like, well, am I even asking myself the right questions? Am I aligned with this job description? And you don't want AI just to tell you everything? These are the people that can be very, very helpful if you can't hire a coach to do the programs you and I do. There are these resume writers that know plenty of things that can help you get unstuck.
I am blowing the lid off of our best kept secret, our 30-day blast program. Yeah, you heard it. 30 days. We have seen so much success for this program that past clients have landed in that 30 days and increased their compensation 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, over 100%. Now, not everybody lands and earns that much in 30 days, but my point is it prepares you. And in 30 days, if you're not out of there with a changed mindset and changed clear and simple ways to be able to navigate the market this year, then we'll gladly refund your misery and you can go back to applying now. Check out the link below for the next 30-day blast, and we would love to have you there because we live for your success, and that's what's really important. See you then.
Okay, over to LinkedIn.
Okay, let's talk about LinkedIn. LinkedIn is your marketing storefront window, full stop. If you don't maximize it from the very top to the very bottom, from your banner and your photo and your amazingly dense, keyword-rich headline, all the way down to the skills and recommendations, then you are missing a huge opportunity and you will not be populating into recruiter searches. So just doing it and leaving it alone is not enough.
I had a client recently say to me, nobody, she talked to a couple, I guess, HR people. She's in HR herself. She says, recommendations, nobody reads those. What are your thoughts?
I disagree. Every time someone reaches out for a connection request with me, I look at their profile for a few seconds from top to bottom, and because I want to see if they're legit and if I'm going to get a sales pitch, honestly. So, because you and I get a lot of that in our roles, leading our own little companies, right? So I look all the way down, and especially when I've done executive search, because I have led searches, I want to see, this is social proof. What are people putting their faces and names behind it saying about you? And did you give recommendations? What kind of leader are you? So if you have 20 recommendations and 2 that you gave, that makes my stomach kind of flip over a little.
I completely, especially when there's a lot of, team player and coach, whatever, or I'm well connected or inclusive leader or any of those
Prove it.
kinds of things. Exactly. Prove it. We all need t-shirts. So seriously.
Qualified isn't enough. Prove it.
Right. Seriously, because people, and this goes both ways, right? You as a candidate want that company to prove it to you. That's why you'll go to Glassdoor. That's why you'll look at their LinkedIn. That's why you'll talk to other people who have previously been there. You better believe it that they're doing the same thing, because bad hires are expensive. And so muchos. What is the...
So just for the average hire, it's 3 times a person's annual salary. And when I'm doing my interview skills training in corporate and we're trying to upskill people on how to craft effective questions and assess talent, incalculable for a leader. Culture damage, internal disruption, lost opportunities with gaining new customers, process improvement, damage amongst relationships internally and externally. We could go on and on and on.
Right. So especially, and in case you haven't heard this yet, we're in a climate of uncertainty. So you better believe that they are looking for every single way that they can validate that this person's a good hire. And while they're validating, they're also working overtime to mitigate any kind of risk. So these are working in cahoots with each other. You know, how much evidence do you have that says you really are what you say you are? And then how much risk can I really accept or I don't even have to worry. And that's always a good sign.
Absolutely. And that's why referrals are so golden, because people want to know. That's part of the social proof. But what I would also say is you and I are serving a similar population of people, mature job seekers, oftentimes in leadership roles, all the way up to the executive level. And these leadership processes are taking 4 to 6 months. I have had plenty of clients that start with me on day one and they're like, well, I'm going to go ahead and sign up for your program. We'll start on the UVP, but I've got interviews in play. I'm like, hot dog, let's go. So we do our interview prep in tandem. And I'm talking CTO level, global sales leader of a multi-billion-dollar company, very senior level director at a global company, like multiple. The fastest I've seen is 4 months, even with their bird in hand because of the referral. The CTO I worked with, I do talk about him in my book. He took 6 months, 21 interviews, Lauren, 21. He knew the CEO and the leadership team. This is a big role that so they said, we need you to do the 22nd. And he said, no, thank you. I'm out. And then they made him an offer. And it's worked out. He's doing killer. Absolutely. And he's doing my chapter 9 thought leadership. He's getting on podcasts. Very cool. But these processes are taking a long time. So if you are lulling yourself into this beautiful idea that just the referral is enough, you got to win the job. You have to be the most relevant and least risky candidate, just like you just said.
I love the way you're just like setting it up here, because I do want to talk about some networking misfires, because you were talking about referrals, and referrals just don't happen when you go and like either demand or expect. Like my kind of very trite line is, your network doesn't work like a bellhop, right? You can't just ring the bell and expect, oh my goodness, like here's your cappuccino and eggs Benedict. It doesn't work like that. So tell us.
Thanks. You just made me hungry. I haven't had breakfast.
Oh my God, I only wish I could bring that to you.
Oh.
But how do you spot the difference between networking that kills trust versus networking that increases influence?
My husband told me a funny story a couple of years ago. I think it was during the pandemic. And someone in his network who he knew, they weren't best friends or anything, came to him. My husband is a beacon of he's a lightning rod for job seekers to ask for his opinion and advice. And this person talked for maybe an hour straight, nonstop, couldn't stop talking. And then the last 30 seconds, as it was coming to a close, he goes, oh, and how can I help you? And my husband was just like, that's really not what the conversation's about. It's as if that person took some playbook and then verbal vomited probably everything about what they were doing. And, it was so overwhelming that I don't know if my husband could help or not. I'm not sure. He's smart. He could figure it out. But there are better ways to ask for help and support. 1, you must know your UVP. 2, you must know your target or multiple targets and how your UV fits. And then 3, you must be able to communicate that so the people hearing it and who are helpful, or as our friend Steve Dalton says, who are advocates and boosters, can speak on our behalf. And unless we do that, we will leave a question mark for people and they can't help us.
I mean, networking is either like, I feel like most people are love-hate. I think it's very polarizing. But what I have seen over and over and over again, that even the people that were like, I hate it, I never want to do this, can learn to love it, because with the simple interest in them and being curious, it could spark great conversations that can really lead to a lot of opportunity to talk about your UVP. I did a post today on networking narcissism and how not to be that person, because that will not instill a lot of influence. In fact, I would offer that it would probably boomerang your chances, because that person, and I call it, taker energy, you can just, it's so palpable, right? You can feel that person. They're needy, they're hungry, and they're very focused on the extraction, not the exchange. And so, what can I get from you? How much more can I take? How can I use you? And of course, this isn't always conscious. I think a lot of it is very much based off of the human desire to get what we want, and we want it now. So if you are finding yourself in a place of imposed urgency, just slow down a little bit, because they can feel that, and you don't want to burn your network, because that's your
Absolutely.
lifeline. But
You know, what I'd love to talk about, if you don't mind, is there are frameworks that you can use as a back pocket for these networking conversations. I talk about it in Job Search Strategy, Chapter 8. Now, what I will say is the first thing is reframe the idea of networking into relationship building and connection.
Thank you.
Rather than I gotta go network, because now you're leaning into elevator pitch and marketing and pushing and selling. So let's reframe it. One thing that I refer to in the book is a book by Dr. David Burkus. He wrote a book called Friend of a Friend, and it's all the social science based on relating to people, especially through and accessing people through dormant ties. So the first couple chapters are the parts that really resonate for me. The book is great, but that's what I'm using for my basis of helping people. And the idea is, who's the most likely to take our call in our entire ecosystem? People who already know, like, and trust us, even if it was someone we grew up with in the cul-de-sac, even if it was the alumni group from college, even if it was church, pickleball, you name it, someone you haven't talked to for a decade is the most likely to take your call over a cold call. And what's happened in the last decade since you've talked to them? They have built a life and a professional network that you currently do not have access to. What if you just have a friendly conversation with them to find out what's going on with them and just see where it goes? Okay, so that is awakening dormant ties. Now, let's talk about back pocket frameworks. This is for anyone. My son, 23, navigating his first big job search, he's using these, but my executives use these. You show up in service of that organization. You put on your consultant's hat and you start fact finding. What's going on in your organization? What is keeping you up at night? What are the big initiatives that you're working on? What is impeding your success? So what are the two frameworks I would say pull out of your back pocket? One is a SWOT. What are the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of the organization? I don't like the word weakness. I wouldn't throw that out at a connection, but you get the idea. The second, I borrow from Steve Dalton. It's called Tiara. What are the trends? What are the insights that you have for me? What advice do you have? What resources do you recommend? Podcasts or books or webinars I should be tapping into? The last part is assignments, and I don't recommend that for executives per se, but like my son who's 23, maybe there's some assignment he should go off and like consider and contemplate. Show up as in service of that company and that person and think about what they need. If you've done the UVP work and you know your target and you know what your value prop is, you don't have to worry about it because you're already bringing it with you.
I hope you guys are like hearing angels, because this is so good. And exactly. And there's nothing wrong with writing it down or listening again or any of that, because we both, Gina and I can just say, we know that this is no cakewalk. So use every tool in the toolbox. Use every tool in the toolbox, because trust me when I tell you, and I would be so curious what you have to say about this is, you're going to need a lot of motivation, and you're also going to need to have people in your corner who are there to keep you on track, because it's pretty easy to get discouraged. So what do you say? And is this, something that is even outside of the book, or maybe your next book or never yet? No, I'm kidding.
I got another one in me.
Awesome. About how to manage the race or the marathon. It's really not a race. How do you manage yourself right? Because everything that you shared with us today, winning, hashtag winning all day long. But we're human and we're human beings going through a really challenging marketplace. We're also dealing with a lot of other variables and factors that are happening and changing by the second. And if you haven't been in the job search for a long time, you really don't know what's coming. So what are some of the things that you help your clients and help all of for the betterment of people who are going through this? What would you say and what would you suggest that they do?
The first thing I would say is do not do it alone. And no, you don't have to hire a high ticket coach to do it. There are a lot of free job seeker groups out there. You can form one of my best friends a couple of years ago was making a difficult transition from being a stay at home mom for over 20 years, had some side businesses along the way, but the corporate job. And she formed a group across the nation. It was just like 4 or 5 of them. They weren't even all in Portland, where I'm from. And they got on once a week. Hey, what are you doing? What are you uncovering? All different kinds of jobs. None of them were looking for the same exact kind of job. And they provided insights and support, right? So this whole process is about connection. And also, when you do something like that or you build a tribe, then you're taking a burden off of those in your family, your partner, your spouse, because everyone's on the journey with you. And so that frees you up to be the person that your family needs you to be if you're leaning into the support network. The other thing I would say that is underutilized is what I call the PBOD, or the personal board of directors, or you could say a mentor circle. And what you want to do is be strategic and intentional about who those people are. You don't want vanilla. You don't want 5 people on that board of directors who all have the same kind of job title and background. If you have smart people who have different backgrounds and different advice and support, you're going to get more rich information to draw from. Do the people on your personal board all have to be the same over your whole career? No, you can swap them in and out. And then I would also say pay attention to what it means to be a good mentee if you want to have mentors, because I feel like the board is slightly different than a mentee-mentor relationship. So, and I've written an article on that. I interviewed the woman who runs the Center for Mentoring Excellence, Lisa Fain. She's a CEO and has written about 5 books, mostly co-authored with her mother. And there's very specific things that you can do, and you can glean it all from these books on how to have that relationship and even how to be a good mentor. Really good stuff. So why not build relationships to get through this really difficult time? That's what I would say. One more thing, Lauren, thought leadership. Thought leadership. That is your connection out to the world, showcasing what you know, inviting conversation. Do you have to know everything about a topic? No, you need to be a water cooler. And today, LinkedIn is highly valuing comments. So if you can generate comments on your post because you're being insightful, you will get eyeballs on your content. Vice versa, if you start easy, dip your toe into LinkedIn and be an amazing commenter on professional posts that relate to what you do, you will get eyeballs on your profile.
All of this today. Massive, massive thank you. And we're gonna actually, I'm gonna do a little clip at the beginning of this, but what I really want to say is, you guys, this is the time. Go to the link below. It's the link to buy Gina's book. Get it, read it, highlight it, grab your dog ears and your Post-its and do all that stuff. Help yourself. Help yourself. So Gina Riley, I will make sure that your LinkedIn profile, your website, et cetera, is there. And listeners, I gotta thank you. We are freaking killing it. And I am so grateful and excited because it's only because of you. You can't have a podcast without listeners. And if the listeners aren't listening, then it doesn't stay around. But that's not what's happening. We are in the top 1.5%. I also am going to put out my goal. I am at 155 Career Blast and a half Apple Podcast reviews. And if you could do that, oh my goodness, my goal is to get to 200 by the end of the year. So yeah, I'm asking. And I want you to have the courage to ask for what you need to. So please go to the bottom, buy Gina's book, and then the next step is please write an Apple Podcast review. And no, we will see you next week. And thank you so much. Gina, thank you.
Thank you for joining today. We appreciate your listening ears. Big time. We ask this: use these tools, not tomorrow, right now, and share them by spreading the love, leaving us a rating and subscribe so you don't miss the next career blast and a half. Most of all, thank you for you.